So those are kind of the benefits of education. So one empirical question is, what are the real benefits of education? The other empirical question is, what are people perceived to be the benefits of education? Another theme that is touched upon in the movie is this top-down versus bottom-up. So here the government is trying a big top-down approach, trying to do it very fast, putting all the money from the top, making it compulsory, which is the ultimate top-down. And this type of supply-driven policy has been, as I was saying, popular in many countries. Many African countries, Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, have recently, relatively recently, in the last 10 years or so, adopted free primary education, are moving to free secondary education now. India, as I was saying, has a right to education, which actually allows people in principle to sue the government if they don't get to school. So this supply drives has been the main education policy until in the last 3 decades. The Millennium Development Goal specify that every child should get at least a basic education. Basic goes till 9 years of education. What is interesting is that there is no mention anywhere that they should actually learn anything in those schools. It's sort of assumed that if they get 9 years of education, they'll get something out of it. But as we will see, it's a pretty big assumption. And there are certainly some clear sign of success of these big supply drives. Between 1999 and 2006, the enrollment rate have increased. In sub-Saharan Africa, from 54% to 70%. In East and Southeast Asia, from 75% to 88%, these are primary school enrollment rate. Secondary school enrollments have also increased, even though secondary school is much more expensive, much more difficult to do for governments. So worldwide, there are still a bunch of millions of kids who are not in school, but much less in 2006 than they were in 1999. So is it all worthwhile? That's the question that Easterly is asking in the reading for today. And what is his answer? His answer is not that graph. Yeah?
That's not education in itself. An increase in education is not going to cause an increase in growth.
Right. He's saying it's useless. And the evidence, so how does he explain that despite the fact that it's useless, people have still done it? Yeah, go ahead.
That was going to answer.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say because they've implemented in a lot of countries the growth rates.
Exactly. So what Easterly is saying is that you guys have been fooled by this graph. So what is this graph? These are countries. USA, Romania, Paraguay, Venezuela. And these are the average years of schooling of the population. And this is the log output per worker relative to the US. So everybody is negative because the US is the richer country in the world. And what you can see here is that there is a pretty strong correlation between the log output per worker and the years of schooling. Countries which have more years of schooling are also richer. So one could conclude from there that a year of education increases income. And people have certainly drawn this conclusion. What is his point about this graph? Yes, there are more of everything. For example, we could run this graph with the number of football team you have. You would probably have, you would have a lot of zeros, so it wouldn't be such a good graph, but you would have the same relationship, that places that play American football are also richer. And we don't think it's because of American football. I mean, at least I don't think so, but you may have a different view. So that correlation is not very informative. So what he's suggesting is to say, well, let's not look in levels. Let's look in differences. And I couldn't find such a nice looking graph for differences, but here is one. Now we have the difference in human capital from, say, it's 1990 minus 1965. So it's a log, it's a difference in the log of average years of education. Okay? And now we put the log difference in income. We could do it in level, log, etc. Doesn't matter. What's relevant in this graph is you get a big cloud of points and a completely horizontal line. So if I translate this graph in words, what this is saying is that the countries which have increased the most the average years of education of the labor force are the countries which have brought more and more kids to school, have not become richer. So you compare, in the Easterly reading, you had he had a comparison between different African countries which had made different level of progress. So I think, say, for example, Ghana versus Madagascar. And saying that Ghana has increased education more, Madagascar has increased education more, and Ghana has not grown faster than Madagascar. Actually, I don't think that's true anymore. I think subsequent to that, Ghana has increased grown quite a bit faster than Madagascar. But that's, let's say, was the point, what the case at the time. So what this is, so now we interpret in saying, well, when we take the difference out, now we're really seeing what has been the effort in terms of increasing the years of education versus the gain in terms of increasing the GDP, and we see no effect. So the level relationship was all coming from this bias, and in fact, there's no effect of the years of education. And the bias in the level regression are some form of the ability bias, as you were saying. Rich countries have more education because it takes money to have teachers, they can afford it, or maybe they choose to be educated because when it's more worthwhile to get an education if you can do something with that education. So that comes back to this argument of what's the point of getting an education if you're going to come back to the village anyway. So if education allows you to take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded by economic growth, then you're going to be more willing to get an education if you think that the country is going to grow a lot. So for all these reasons, you would expect more education in rich countries, not because education causes growth, but because growth causes education. So his conclusion is that internationally driven investment to education were a waste, that education is actually useless.